The Persian Empire suffered a series of defeats against the Macedonian force at Granicus, Issus, and Gaugamela, and by the end of 331 BC, Alexander had advanced to Babylon and Susa. A royal road connected Susa with the more eastern capital of Persepolis and Pasargad in Persia, and was the natural avenue for Alexander's continued campaign. Meanwhile, King Darius was trying to raise a new army at Ecbatana. Ariobarzanes was charged with preventing the Macedonian advance into Persia. He relied heavily on the terrain Alexander needed to pass through. There were only a few possible routes through the Zagros mountain, all of which were made more hazardous by winter onset. After the conquest of Susa, Alexander split the Macedonian army into two parts. Alexander's general Parmenion took one half along the royal road, and Alexander himself towards Persia. Passing into Persia required traveling the Persian Gate, a narrow mountain pass that lent itself easily to ambush. During his advance, Alexander subdued the Uxan, a local hill tribe which had demanded the same tribute from him. They used to receive from the Persian king for safe passage. As he passed into Persian Gate, he met with no resistance, believing that he would not encounter any more enemy force during his march. Alexander neglected to send a scout ahead of his vanguard, and thus walked into Ariobarzanes' ambush. According to the historian Arrian, Ariobarzanes had a force of 40,000 infantry and 700 cavalry, and faced a Macedonian force of over 10,000. However, some modern historians have claimed that figure for the Achaemenid force to be grossly exaggerated and implausible. Encyclopedia Iranica suggests a number of defenders of just 700 or no more than 2,000 men, based on the maximum number of troops likely Ariobarzanes' disposal, but it notes that most modern historians follow Arrian, Cartius, and Diodora. Persian Gate was only a couple of meters wide at the ambush point. Once the Macedonian army had advanced far enough into the narrow pass, the Persians rained down builders on them from the northern slope. From the southern slope, Persian archers launched their projectile. Alexander's army initially suffered heavy casualties, losing entire platoons at a time. The Macedonians attempted to withdraw, but the terrain and their still advancing rear guard made an orderly retreat impossible. Alexander was forced to leave his dead behind to save the rest of his army, a great mark of disgrace to the Macedonians and to other Greeks who valued highly the recovery and proper burial of their fallen. Ariobarzanes had some reason to believe that success here would change the course of the war. Preventing Alexander's passing through the Persian Gate would force the Macedonian army to use other routes to invade Persia proper, all of which would allow Darius more time to field another army and possibly stop the Macedonian invasion altogether. Ariobarzanes held the pass for a month, but Alexander succeeded in encircling the Persians in a pincer attack with Ptolemy and broke through the Persian defense. Alexander and his elite contingent then attacked Ariobarzanes from above in a surprise attack until Persians could no longer block the pass. Account of how he did so vary widely. Cartius and Arrian both report that prisoners of war led Alexander through the mountains to the rear of the Persian position, while a token force remained in the Macedonian camp under the command of Craterius. The Persians fought a memorable fight. Unarmed as they were, they seized the armed men in their embrace and dragging them down to the ground, stabbed most of them with their own weapons. According to some accounts, Ariobarzanes and his surviving companion were trapped, but rather than surrender, they charged straight into the Macedonian line. One account states that Ariobarzanes was killed in the last charge, while Arrian report that Ariobarzanes escaped to the north, where he finally surrendered to Alexander with his companion. Modern historian J. Parvez maintained that Ariobarzanes and his force retreated to Persepolis, where they found the city gate closed by Theodotus, a Persian noble and guardian of the royal treasury under Darius, who had been in secret contact with Alexander the Great. Theodotus considered resisting Alexander's force to be futile and so allowed Alexander to massacre Ariobarzanes and his troops right outside the city wall rather than fight. This is in agreement with Cartius account which state that the Persian force, after both inflicting and suffering heavily casualties in the ensuing battle, broke for the Macedonian force and retreated the Persepolis, but were denied entrance into the capital, at which point they returned to fight Alexander's army to the